Welcome, Helito, everyone. My name's Shannon O'Loughlin. I'm a citizen of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, here with you live, coming from the homelands of the Piscataway peoples, what is known today as Maryland. We are here for our 64th episode of Red Hoop Talk, a Native News and Talk show brought to you by the Association on American Indian Affairs. Thanks everyone for joining me, and please, if you're out there at YouTube, watching on Facebook, watching on Twitter, give us a shout out, say hello, let us know where you're watching from, and if you're affiliated with a tribal nation, let us know where you come from. If you're not affiliated with a tribal nation, why don't you tell us whose homeland you are currently standing on? Let's see, what have we got going on today? We had Independence Day weekend, so it's been kind of a short week at the association. We were happy to see that the Department of the Interior this afternoon released its comprehensive total redo of the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act regulations, because the regulations as they are currently written are a pain in the ass. So we're so glad to see this this new redo of the regs, and looking through it, and it looks pretty good. If you're one of those nerds like I am, like to look at regulations and like to figure them out, and especially if you are affiliated with a tribal nation and their TIPO or NAGPRA liaison or other folks in cultural departments, make sure that you get that tribal leader letter and the consultation schedule for consultations regarding these NAGPRA regs, because they're going to be really important. As we move forward, there are at least 116,000 Native American bodies that have not yet been repatriated from institutions and federal agencies. And those are just numbers that we know. This year, the association's 7th annual repatriation conference is going to be held on November 3rd, 10th, and 17th. It's going to be an interesting 3 weeks, those 3 weeks. And we're trying to fundraise to get scholarships so that the conference can be free or nearly free for folks that want to attend. But I invite you to learn more about how important repatriation is to Native American lifeways, to all the things that make us who we are as Native peoples, and how it applies beyond those issues with federal agencies and museums. So that's my spiel for repatriation, as I like to give. There's some really interesting things going on in the Northwest, and our guest tonight, Mr. Darrell Hillaire, is from the Lummi Nation and is going to be talking about some of those. So I thought I'd warm you up before I bring him on. I want to share with you this video. If you weren't aware of the totem pole that the Lummi Nation, folks from the Lummi Nation carved and is taking to Washington, D.C., I want to show you a little video about that while we get warmed up here for our guest. Let's make sure I'm doing everything right. Here we go. And play.
For the last 20 years, the House of Tears carvers of the Lummi Nation have transported totem poles around the world as a way of bringing communities together and highlighting issues. This year is our biggest journey yet. A large coalition of Indigenous and non-Indigenous groups have gathered and supported this project, where we're driving a 25-foot totem pole across the country, stopping at many sacred and historic places under threat from dams, climate change, and resource extraction. As the totem pole moves, it carries the spirits of the land it visits. It's like a battery that charges as it travels. As people touch it, they give it power. As it moves on, it shares that power with the next community it visits. This totem pole draws lines of connection between communities fighting for the land and for the future, and against an understanding of development that has been pushing the world towards extinction. The journey will end in Washington, D.C., where it will be delivered to the Biden administration as a strong and important message. It's a reminder of the promises that were made to the first peoples of these lands and waters, and to the responsibility we all share to safeguard the sacred sources of life, earth, water, sky, for the generations to come.
Woo! Yeah, that was such a wonderful video, and I think we all need to review where the totem pole is and where it's going, and I think it's been stopping at places along the way. If you can, stop and see it, place your hands on it, share your power and energy with it, and let's see what minds and hearts we can change along the way. Another wonderful thing is going on from the Northwest this week, actually, was the Orca and Salmon Summit, which brought together tribes of the Northwest and I think even beyond to talk about taking down 4 dams in particular. And it seems that this is supported by Washington State Congress folks and others. But the life of the orca is also dependent on the salmon, and as are the peoples of the Northwest. And so I want to get right in to introducing our guest tonight, who will talk more about this. He is a citizen of the Lummi Nation, Mr. Darrell Hillaire. He is the current executive director and co-founder of the Children of the Setting Sun Productions, which is a nonprofit. It's located in Bellingham, Washington, which is really, really close to the Lummi Nation. And he leads projects based on lifetime relationships there with many elders and spiritual leaders within the Coast Salish territory. So without any further ado, Mr. Darrell Hillaire. Welcome, welcome. Thank you, Darrell.
Hi, Aishka. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for sharing and sharing some time with us today. And let's get right into it. Tell us a little bit about where you come from and who you are, who your family is at Lummi.
Yeah. Siam Nestelichus Siam Satsamton Sunat Snat Chakalamitson. My name is Darrell Hillaire, and I'm from the Lummi Nation. I come from the Hillaire family. Children of the Setting Sun was formed as a 501c3 6 years ago, but Children of the Setting Sun has been around over 100 years. It was formed by my great-grandfather, Frank Hillaire, to do some things that we're doing today. He wanted to get out and educate the newcomers. I think they were called settlers back then, in the 1800s. And he wanted to let them know who we are and what they're getting into here in the Coast Salish territory, which means a high amount of respect and a great sense of responsibility for this place that we live in. And he wanted to share that with the settlers in the form of song, dance, and storytelling. So he did that. And if you were to go online and look up Frank Hillaire, you'd see pictures of him, and you can get a sense for what he was trying to do to bring the newcomers into our homeland and to share with them how rich we are living in this part of the world, with the abundance of salmon, the abundance of timber, with clean water, with the warmth of the people. And he just wanted people to know that. And so he did that for a number of years until he passed. And he passed that responsibility on to Joe Hillaire. And if you looked him up, you'd find him too, who took hold of the Children of the Setting Sun and continued that work. But Joe was also a carver, so he was a prolific carver, much like my dear friend Jewel James is doing today. Uncle Joe did that back in the 50s and 60s. As a matter of fact, he carved 2 totem poles at the World's Fair in 1962. One he gifted to the nation of Japan, and one he put up here in the Pacific Northwest. And he positioned them in such a way that they were facing one another. And his message was that we need to have peace amongst our people, the Japanese and the US post-World War II. He had it in his heart to close that work, that the war, but the work around how to have peace amongst people was his most important mission. So we did that. So then Uncle Joe passed on, and then his nieces and nephews, if you will, Chetaluk's grandkids took it up. And at that point, there were like 5 or 6 versions of Children of the Setting Sun, and they were spread out all over the Pacific Northwest. I think only one carried the name Children of the Setting Sun, but the cousins, they shared the same songs and the same dances, and they continued that work. And they felt it as a responsibility, as we began to grow here in the Pacific Northwest. It was a sense of, well, I think people need to know that we're still here, that we're still doing what we've always done, that we still care for the homeland that we live in, and to share some of that with them so that perhaps they would know too that they have a responsibility. And then for the most part, that all went away when they've all passed on. For a little while there, I did have a canoe. We had a war canoe named the Setting Sun and carried on the name. But then I got old and chubby and I quit canoe paddling, so we don't paddle anymore. But now in my time, as a grandfather and as a former member of the Lummi Nation's Council and being part of the tribal government for so many years, I decided to pick up the work of my great-grandfather using today's methods, today's way of communicating. And as a storyteller, my responsibility is to pass that on to our children. I wondered what my mission was in the beginning, because it was just coming to me. It was just coming to me to tell these stories. And some of them took place on stage, theater productions. Some were videos, a lot of public speaking. And so then when Elder looked at me and she came up to me and said, you know why you're doing this, don't you? She said, it's for our children. It's for the next generation. So that clarified it, made it really simple for me. And everything that I do, I'm very intentional that we're not doing this for money. We're not doing this for awards. We're not doing this for notoriety. We're doing this for our people, our next generation, who need to understand that perhaps some of the things that they're inheriting is not very good for them. It's not laid out in such a way that they're stepping into the world of wealth that we were born into, that they actually have work to do. But we're going to give them those tools, those songs, those stories, the language, those things that will help them stay connected and teach others, and what is really important to know about life on this earth. And what's really important, I think, from our perspective, from our view of the world, is that here at Lummi and Coast Salish territory, we really feel that we're the culture of gratitude, that we give thanks for everything that is received from the salmon, from the waters, from the forest, from all living things. We're taught to give thanks because that's what sustains us, you know. That's what keeps us humble in our work and keeps us grounded in the sense of community, of tribal community, is that sense of gratitude. You see it so often, you know, when our fishers go out, they, you know, they can make money from their fish, but the first fish they take and they give it to an elder or to somebody in the community that is less fortunate than them, then cannot be on the water. They do, as a practice, that's probably the thing that I notice so often in tribal communities, is that we take care of each other and be thankful and be generous and respectful for our lifeway. So we think that's really important in today's world, today's environment, today's climate, where greed and selfishness and apathy has gotten us this situation of, you know, an epidemic that has extended over 18 months. It's gotten us heat waves in the Pacific Northwest up over 100 degrees, you know. We moan around when it gets over 70, you know. And, so, and here we were, you know, it was really, it was fearful, you know. And we pay attention to what's going on in the world, you know, with the amount of forest fires in California, with the amount of hurricanes in the south, and clear around the world, the amount of melting ice, you know. We think Mother Nature is speaking to us, you know. And some of that, at some point, it's going to be without mercy, you know. So we need to tell our story to say, maybe this narrative that we carry could be helpful in changing perspectives and transforming people to act a little bit more generous, to act a little bit more grateful, to act with a little bit more respect in what they do in their lives. Then together we can work our way out of this. I view it as a crisis that we're living in this very moment. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what it means growing up with salmon and the ocean kind of as your primary gifter of life. I mean, that's so, you know, I think about where my ancestors grew up in the Southeast, and then into Oklahoma, way far away from any ocean water. What is it like to grow up with your values being connected to salmon and to the water?
Well, you know, I went to the Orca and Salmon Summit down in Olympia the last few days, Wednesday, Thursday. And I guess what I noticed is that today we're at summits and we're at conferences and we're at meetings talking about, hey, where's our salmon? When do we get to go fishing? How are we going to bring the salmon back? And we're not doing what we did a generation ago, which was from like May and June over to like November, we were fishing. And when you think about that, well, what does that mean, we're fishing? Well, for a 4-year-old, that means that little boys learn how to tie knots. You know, maybe at 12 years old, they're hanging the net and they're getting the gear ready and they're working on the boat. And maybe by 14 years old, they're going out and becoming a man or becoming a woman because they're going out on their own to fish. And then you think about that, and fishers that have been doing that from 4 years old till 70, and all those stories that they carry, and all that knowledge from how to read the water and read the salmon and read the environment for when the salmon are coming home, and how the salmon governed our lives. That was our original government, was salmon and the water. They told us what to do, when to go fishing, when to put it away, when to share it, when to have ceremony. All those things were tied to salmon, which was central to our life. And so that's what I was thinking about when I was sitting there listening to the problems that we have today, and that knowledge is being diminished, you know. because we're in a conference room, not on the beach or on the water with our children, with our grandfathers, and remembering and showing and telling and getting that education, if you will, and so that's what I see today. Indigenous knowledge comes right from inside the family and what they do as a family and what their gifts are and what their responsibilities are.
So when you were in a position of tribal leadership, how did you see things differently? And did you feel like you were able to help the tribe make changes it needed to make to help support those values?
It's funny when you're on these Zoom calls, you don't want to wear your glasses because you just don't want to have to look over the dust and the blurry stuff. But then you have to squint when you're online, so you put your glasses back on. But could you repeat the question, though? I was kind of distracted by that.
No, that's okay. So I was just wondering what your life was like, how it was different as a tribal leader, serving in council, and whether you feel like you are more effective outside tribal government or inside tribal government, or just your general experience about being a tribal leader. Because I know there's all sorts of stories from all around the country about folks being in tribal leadership and then coming out and how they see things differently.
Well, I probably have a different view on leadership because I think leadership comes from within the different community structures. The government structure at Lummi, as well as a lot of other tribal governments, they're kind of like a colonized form of government. We have the executive branch, judicial, and legislative branch, and we think and act in that manner.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but that is where the resources go. That is where the connection between the federal government and the tribes take place. So part of that is a necessity to be able to speak that speak and walk that walk. But it's really important to stay grounded and be part of or stand in line and know where to stand when you're within the community, whether that be the fishers, and there's leaders within our fishing community, there's leaders in our spiritual house, and just because you're on the council doesn't mean you're a leader of those groups. No, you learn how to stand in line and be in line when you're amongst the people. So I was very aware of that through time, and it was it's about leadership in terms of what is the vision for ourselves beyond this colonization of our people, and whatever it takes us to get there, whether that's working with the federal government, or as Lummi was one of the first tribes to change that relationship with the federal government under the self-governance laws, and took that upon ourselves to redefine government at Lummi. And we try to do that as much as we can in terms of holistic thinking, in terms of integrating our cultural practices into our modalities, in terms of remembering to conduct ceremony, whether that be within a program or program supporting ceremonies, so that the tribal way of life is included in our government. And it's an evolution that has occurred over the last 20 years. And we're starting to get it, I think, and it's going to really help us because we have a number of social problems and actually severe epidemic of opioids at our community, and putting ourselves together in such a way that we can address it completely, I think, is where the solutions are, and not just strictly government or strictly the traditional way of doing things. I think we need each other to take this on.
Yeah, I've seen that with, as an attorney, I've seen that with your law and codes. In fact, I cite the Lummi Constitution quite often because in the Constitution, you actually assert jurisdiction over all cultural heritage, no matter where it is.
Right.
And I think that's an important idea and value, that you don't repeat the language of the thieves and the colonizers who have stolen cultural heritage and removed it. And I know the Northwest peoples have a long history of their items being taken and potlatch being outlawed and many other ceremonies being outlawed in the Northwest.
Yeah. Yep.
Did you, growing up, because I think you're the, with all respect, you're my elder and you're the generation ahead of me. What was it like growing up at the time you grew up? When were those things still practiced? Like, when did this whole revitalization movement come back, or was it just always practiced? But
well, our spiritual practices were always there, but they were underground for a while.
Yeah.
And we embraced Christianity. You know, my mom's generation and my grandmother's generation. You know, so it was in the middle of the boarding school era. You know, so that happened quite a bit, and you know, our fishing was being taken away by the state government. So, and we lived the federal Indian policies through time, relocation, termination, those things. So as I was growing up, there was like 600 people on the reservation, and mostly Christian, and the spiritual practices were still there. I could hear the drums at night, and they came to the house periodically to visit mom and dad. But I think what was always there for Lummi was there was always this resistance, this fight against termination, against assimilation, against colonization. I think that's just kind of in our blood, you know, and we've resisted that in every form and manner, and stuck to our beliefs through time, you know, from Lux time all the way through to today, you know. And today we're actually realizing the fruits of the courageous men and women who stood up to the federal government, stood up to the state of Washington, stood up to the county and cities around us for our water. You know, we won the coal port battle. You know, we've defeated the IRS and their efforts to tax tribal resources, namely salmon, you know. And we were part of the team of tribes that initiated self-governance, you know. So these things were really carrying on the beliefs of our ancestors, you know, and we didn't forget, you know, that we're self-sufficient and we're sovereign, you know. So that's something that I watch with great interest today, and how the young people think and act. I don't want to get them too far over there and become like full-time collaborators, you know. That was an Oren Lyons quote, you know. He says, we don't want to become a bunch of collaborators, you know, we're sovereign. So I'll never forget that.
That's true. That's true. Everyone wants to collaborate and consult with us, and wait a minute, don't forget we're more than that. We are sovereign nations, and absolutely. So I'd love to get into more about your work with I'm looking for, where did I put it? With the children of the setting sun. I'm wondering if now would be a good time to share that little 5-minute video that we have that kind of introduces that work.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Sure. There's a whole slug of things you can look at on YouTube if people want to look there. But yeah, whatever you want to put up.
Okay, sure. So I want to share this great video with everyone. Let me get it going on here. Screen 2. Here we go. Oops. I'm a little slow sometimes with this. Here we go.
Children of the Setting Sun, the dance group that my great-grandfather Hillaire formed, was his legacy to make the newcomers understand that we're still here. Children of the Setting Sun Productions today is carrying on the work of my great-grandfather. We like to gather people, but we also like to gather stories. And that's what we're doing. We're bringing the people together so that together we can make sure that salmon will always be there for future generations.
I just wanted to say good morning and thank you for answering the call to come together as salmon people. Two critical questions led us here today. First, who are we as salmon people? And then the really scary question is, who are you without salmon? And for me, the simple answer is my soul will be crushed, because as it always has been since time immemorial, salmon is our everything. To us, salmon is culture and culture is salmon.
Salmon is central to all Coast Salish people, to all indigenous people that live along the rivers that salmon live within. So without salmon, then what becomes of this lifeway?
Our relationship to the salmon started with the creation story. Before we were here, the animals met and decided that they needed to help us. And that's when salmon stepped forward and said, I will give myself. And that is when the ancient covenant started. And now our brother is suffering.
You know, Jay and Darrell, they asked me this question: who are we without salmon? When we have big salmon runs and everybody has fish, everybody's happy when our smokehouse is full. But when we lose our water, when our salmon are declining, our people are unhealthy.
It's a part of our way of life. And without the salmon, we're missing a piece of who we are. We're not able to exercise what was guaranteed in our treaty of 1855, which was a way of life. And we bargained for that.
The treaty talks about the rights that our forefathers made sure were ensconced in the wording. But not only do we have the rights, but we have the responsibility. In all the rights that we say that we have a responsibility, and so we can teach others about the old way that our people teach us about how everything is tied together.
The people, my people, recognize that we're not separate from all living things, we're part of that. Knowing that others have the attitude to have dominion over the rest of the living world, it's our job is to correct them.
Science is beginning to show more and more that the salmon played an integral role in the feeding of everything along the river, the trees, you know, the animals. We know all of this. It's who we are, and we know this. The other world is beginning through their science, catching up to what we already know. So we continue to fight the fight and take up our responsibilities as Yukomino Pulu, as caretakers of the land.
It's important to remember that in those treaties, our ancestors reserved our own rights, and those rights remain the supreme law of the land today. I believe that is the future of how we pull ourselves out of this climate crisis. And hearing all of you today, I really hear a call to gather, to form an alliance of the salmon nations, to use our sovereignty as a collective force to rebuild our nations. So that's what we will do.
That was a pretty powerful video. So can you talk a little bit about the 1970s treaty rights, fishing rights wars? Were you a part of that effort in the 70s and on that finally led to the protection of the usual and accustomed places for hunting and gathering and fishing?
First off, I was a little bit too young to be involved in the council then, but I was aware of what was going on.
Yeah.
The old people were still around then, and if you look at the history, we've been fighting this ever since treaty signing, and things that were guaranteed under treaty, those treaty promises were never kept, and we just kept getting sick and tired of being told what to do by the state of Washington, who didn't recognize our sovereignty under the treaty. So that was the fight, and the state was, heavily influenced by commercial fishermen, sports fishermen, academia, the historians and the like, So, but through time, we kept chipping away at it, and finally it was culminated in the Bolt decision in 1978, where we won. And we won in the eyes of the public. But if you talk to the old people, they felt that we lost. It was a win, but it wasn't a complete win. We believe we have a right to all the salmon and not having to have half of it go to other people that don't regard the salmon the way we do. So, but it was a great coming home for us, because, during the relocation era and folks not being able to fish and getting arrested for fishing and getting shot at for fishing, a lot of people had jobs in the inner city. But when the Bolt decision was won, a lot of people came home and went fishing. Yeah. So it was pretty exciting times then, to see so many boats out in the water and so many people doing, as I described earlier, what our ancestors had been doing since time immemorial. And the indigenous knowledge was still there, it was just like emerged. It's like we came out of the woodwork, we came out of the forest, we came out of the water, and we were home again. So that's what happened then, and it was a great victory. But here we are today with what we like to say, paper salmon. We're fighting over salmon on paper, and the salmon that are available, from the rivers and from the ocean is down to the point now where we'll get a couple of days of fishing this year. I remember back when I was a young fella, I went fishing with my cousin, we were fishing in June, and we put the net away in November. So big difference today.
So is this because of overfishing? Is it has to do with the dams? Is it drought? What's going on?
Well, I think if we ask those questions, we'll just kind of devolve into, well, it's their fault and their fault. It really is back to that guiding principle of just greed and selfishness. That's capitalism promotes that, and it's that idea that we need to make as much money as we can when the getting's good hurt everybody, and it hurt the fishers, it hurt our families, it hurt non-tribal people too, but most importantly though, the salmon are suffering, from all of those factors, the water's too warm, the water's too polluted, there's no habitat for the salmon to live in. It just goes on, and that's where we're at. That's where we got to pick this up, in its worst possible scenarios today. We have to be willing to take it on, and that's why I really support taking the Snake Rivers Dam. It's what it symbolizes. It symbolizes our move away from industrialization and back to nature, and take care of nature so nature can take care of us, I heard that quote somewhere where when we define nature is when we separated ourselves from nature, because we're nature too, But when we start using that term, that made us here and nature over there, and we're taking from it, when we're really just taking from ourselves.
Yes. And it's kind of a principle of Christianity, that nature is something that you control and have dominion over. versus it actually you being dependent on it.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a tough one. It's ingrained in our educational system as well, you know, so
Yeah.
we have a lot of perceptions to change.
Yeah. I remember growing up in a science class or something like this, and I remember talking about the definition of what was inanimate and what was animate, and that rocks were inanimate, and that the rocks had no life, no being, no spirit. And I remember being confused by that forever, because that's not what I was learning at home. I was learning that everything was sacred and everything had a spirit and a gift of some kind. And at school was dividing and conquering things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're absolutely right on. So how did the Orca and Salmon Summit go? Do you think it was helpful? Was it invigorating for the movement to take down the dams?
Well, I'm encouraged by leadership, the people that brought us together there. I feel it's the beginning of a movement, and I think we need to maintain the momentum around this movement. They've made the pledge to have another Salmon Summit in Washington, D.C. So I was inspired by that notion, inspired by those tribes that have lost the fishing, and aren't able to fish at all, but still identify as salmon people because it's in their DNA. And also a lot of young women, as a matter of fact, who claim to be salmon people and are standing up for salmon people, and were there and were inspired by their willingness to become leaders in this movement, you know. So those were good things that came out of there, you know. And also Congressman Simpson from Idaho, who's championed the removal of dams through the United States Congress, was there for a couple of days, and got to meet him and share with him our work, you know. And so I think he's going to be a great ally, and he's standing on principle. He's not standing on the idea that this will get him reelected. So very few of those people in Washington, D.C. act in that manner today, you know. So we need more of him and hers. If there's women there too that are doing such a thing, I'd like to meet them and support them, you know.
Absolutely. Lance is asking a really good question in our chat. He said he heard about someone who gave a river legal personhood. Is this an option for Lummies, or is this any kind of movement that's happening in the Northwest?
I've heard about that. I think in New Zealand they've adopted the rights to the river, and their responsibility is with the Maori to enforce those rights. You know, I think that's a good thing to do. You know, I'm not involved with that, but I've heard about it. You know, and I will be asking those kinds of questions as we move along here. You know, and especially if those rights are enforceable. You know, you know. And how do we get to that point? And first of all, is to establish it, and then figure out how we're going to make it stick. You know.
Yeah, and it's really amazing to me the number of dams that are throughout Indian country. I worked on a lot of issues in New York State about dams, and from there found out all of the dams that occurred in the 30s and some in the 60s through like Army Corps projects and otherwise, you know, flood control, allegedly flood control. But then when you go back and you look at these dams and really the output of water, it makes no sense that there were all these dams. So what is it? Do you know much about the engineering of actually removing a dam and the effect? You know, what happens? Like, what does that look like when you when you actually remove a dam and the water gets to flow, I mean, does bad things happen? Like, does flooding actually happen? like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think I wish we had our relatives from the Elwha here, you know, because the Elwha River,
That's right.
they took down 2 dams from that river 10 years ago, and the salmon is on an upswing. The habitat is being restored, and the people are they're pretty the Sklallam people are pretty optimistic that they're going to get salmon back as part of their way of life once again. It's always been there, but it's going to grow. It's going to be substantial rather than very minimal. So everybody's really happy with how it's occurred.
So there's proof. So
there's proof in that pudding for sure.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's incredible how much of Indian country has been taken up and flooded, or a waterway and ways of life around the water have been removed because of dams all over the United States. But the Northwest, the impact on everywhere, the impact on fish and lifeways that depend on one another. Because it was great in that little video, it showed how the salmon has this relationship with bear and with wolf and with eagle and people that fish sustains, and there's no way that it can do that as things are today.
Mm-hmm.
What does the drought look like? I know a lot of people have been talking about drought in the Northwest.
We put that Zoom meeting together with salmon people from up and down the Pacific coast,
mm-hmm.
and it's pretty dire for the Yurok people down in the Klamath River.
Oh.
They're in the middle of a severe drought, and the river is way too warm. The water levels are way too low. Salmon are dying off at just a real high rate. I'd really suggest that you talk to them at some point, because they're in the middle of removing 4 dams from the Klamath River, and we went down there to visit them, and they've gotten the agreement to move forward. They have a construction company aboard, and they're going to begin this process here in the next couple of years, and they'll give you right from ground zero what's happening with their salmon.
Wow.
Here at Lummi, it's warm, all right. The water is warm, and we're hoping we get rain here, which helps us out substantially, but I don't think it's rained in like 22 days, so it's threatening. And the salmon that we depend upon historically as the most what do you call it? It was our bread and butter salmon was the sockeye from the Fraser River, and the last time we were up there, they were telling us about what salmon needed to move upstream and get back to where they were born, so they can spawn and die. Well, typically their water temperatures are to be around 58 degrees, and when we were there, it was 71.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and they were talking about we get record snowfall in our mountains, which is kind of like our thermostat.
Mm-hmm.
But this thermostat's not working because the record snowfall comes spring and summer. The snow all melts in like 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been not able to maintain kind of like a more normal snowpack melt over the whole summer to keep the water temperatures down, and that's impacting salmon substantially.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that sounds extreme.
Yeah.
So let's see. We've got a couple of questions here. Lance is asking, Can salmon be listed under the Freedom of Religion Act? And I want to ask Lance, do you mean the American Indian Religious Freedoms Act, which has been held to be not enforceable? There's nothing there to, no provisions that are enforceable except for the protection of peyote in the Native American church. But what are the different ways that Lummi Nation is working to protect salmon? And I know this kind of dovetails into what you're doing at Children of the Setting Sun by collecting stories and other information. But so what is the Lummi Nation doing to protect those rights and to protect the fish?
Well, I'm probably the wrong guy to answer that. You know, I'm
Okay.
outside of government. I work to capture stories both within governments and then within communities. You know, but I do know, you know, the victory that we realized through the first Bolt decision that determined that we're to be allotted 50% of the catch. There's that. Then Bolt 2 was that the established tribes' rights to be co-managers of the resource, and all the resources that affect the lifeway of the salmon, tribes have equal rights and equal responsibilities for those co-management, forums, whether it be for salmon, whether it be for rivers and deforestation, all those things that affect salmon. Tribes have a seat at the table.
Right. I think those are called usufructuary rights. Usufructuary rights. Elizabeth is sharing that there are salmon trapped in the deep water holes in the rivers here because there's not enough water to swim back out to where they need to go. So let's talk about Children of the Setting Sun Productions, and I'm going to share the website here. So you are the executive director. You've got the Salmon People Project. Where is... Let me stop there. Hold on a minute. Let me get to the right place I want to get. So talk about your work there and what the organization's vision or mission is.
Well, simply stated, we're to fulfill my great-grandfather's wishes, which was before he passed on, he gave instructions to his grandchildren to keep his fires burning. And that's ingrained in my thinking, in my manner of being, and the things that we do. I just imagine what that work is today and how that correlates to what he did over 100 years ago. So that's pretty clear to me on what to do. Mm-hmm. But then, as you kind of like, as my late aunt used to say, when you open your big mouth, you got to be ready for what comes to you. But today we work on 4 different fronts, if you will. We have our storytelling division, which is where we're going to work on salmon people. We're working on an opioid documentary, and we have other projects that are just kind of like being written, being researched and developed around the story of the Children of the Setting Sun 1, and then places within our homeland that we want to highlight in a fun way, whether it be comedy or some kind of docudrama. So there's that, and then we have a youth development department where we bring in young people to learn how to learn the ins and outs of production, but they also have their own youth podcast, and they also try to learn about who they are and where they come from. So we connect them with people in the community and outside our community about that, whether it be learning how to make blankets or jewelry, or learn their language, or learn their history and learn how we're related throughout our territory. So we do that with them, and that's been actually a real highlight, because the young people that are here, they actually lived at the Lummi Youth Academy, which I helped found 15 years ago. And so they were like 12 and 13 years old then. Today they're like 20 to 23 years old. So it's good to have that connection and have a lifelong connection to people from the next generation. So we have that, we have storytelling, we have youth development. And then COVID came along, and during COVID, we looked at ourselves and we thought, well, what are we going to do? Everybody's going home. So we started a Zoom program, much like we're doing today. We started one for ourselves. It's called One from the Heart. And we started talking to people in Coast Salish territory about how they're responding to COVID, the things that are bothering them, the things that we can still do online, and really just be connected and offer advice and share education with them, so that, you know, we could still maintain some of that kind of connection. So One from the Heart brought us a lot of work, and we've been busy helping a lot of people for the last year and a half. And for instance, we did funerals for the chief. We did graduation ceremonies. We did land acknowledgements. We did promotional videos for universities. We did educational pieces for the colleges. And the list kind of goes on and on. We work for non-GMOs, and it's been kind of fun. It's a little hectic because there's so many of them. They're smaller projects, but we looked at it in terms of, well, that's what we're supposed to be doing. It's our responsibility to help others. So then that was kind of like a newly formed department that we just created during COVID. And then the fourth department is Setting Sun Institute. And that's where we're going to grow what we're doing now with storytelling, all of this work, to create a place for people to access resources and to have conversation and to inform policy and help governments, if you will, or other agencies that perhaps need our content structured in such a way that it could be formulated into curriculum, or formulated into, you know, white papers for the work that they're doing on the Hill or in Olympia. So that's coming, you know. And as we're working on the Salmon People project, we have a component in there for research, where our young people from the youth development team are going to conduct research around who we are as salmon people, and then who are we without salmon. I think that'd be a real valuable conversation to have with families as we go on this journey of discovering more about what tribes are doing, how tribes are feeling, how the tribes are going to get together and solve some of these problems, you know. So we thought that would be an added component to our work, so that it could be quantified in research, which is kind of a bad word in Indian country. So we're really careful with how we're going to do that, and offer it back to the tribes so that they could use it any way that they'd like. But we see it as a real opportunity to help with curriculum development, help with policy development. So we're going to conduct ourselves in that way too. So
Wow.
So that's what we're doing. Yeah.
That's really incredible. So how many people do you all have working for you, or is it really community oriented, kind of grassroots folks just helping out, or, you know, how big is the?
Well, I got an all native board of 10 people, you know, and they're really helpful. They're a source of wisdom, a source of energy and insights from both within tribal government and outside of tribal government. So that's a real plus. You know, they're not people that know how to raise money. They know how they know how to lead and direct and shape and inform and remind us that this work that we're doing is for the next generation. And I think that we're grounded that way, you know, and so we have that, and I rely on them a lot for my work, you know, and especially the elders that we have, you know, that can offer really good advice in the work that we're doing. So there's that, and I kind of laughed the other day because we started with just 3 people, 3 of us working out of a coffee shop, and then
Wow.
here I am 5 years later. I look around and I counted heads, and there's 19 people working here now, you know, and
That's great.
yeah, and the young people are all native, you know, and we have professionals that are not native that are been come to us in a very respectful manner that are working here, you know, and training the young people, you know. So it's going to be grown from the inside out, you know, what we're doing. I see other filmmakers, I see other native filmmakers, you know, I question that and wonder, you know, how do we partner with them? And I'm exploring those ideas too, because I want to be able to reflect their perspectives too from where they come from that are outside of Lummi and Coast Salish territory. I have my eyes wide open to that.
Wow. Wow. Incredible. Incredible. Yeah, some really good work, and you all have done a lot of growth in the last few years. So other than your programs, how do you think the pandemic has affected life at Lummi and with the nations there in Washington long term? Do you think there's are you all into the vaccine? Are you all feeling like you're healthy and coming out of it? Is there still concerns?
I think we're cautious, just like everybody else. I think the public health team that we assembled at Lummi was a cut above. We had the best public health doctor, I think, in the country. Just my own personal opinion, but you know, she responded. She got us first in line for respirators and first in line for vaccines. Was on the ball. Was seeing the messages coming out of Asia when it first hit, and started getting organized and got us going. Where at the end of the day, you know, we were able to share what we had with other non-tribal communities. And non-tribal communities that historically hadn't really gave a hoot about us, you know, and were actually very derogatory towards us. But we exercised our sovereignty and said, yeah, we're going to share with you, you know. So I think that says something about our people, you know, and we come out of that now. We're all just anxious to gather, you know. We're trying to gather. We're gathering people, and I don't know. It's still, we have that little bit of caution there, but learning from COVID though, we learned how important family is to us. You know, we always knew it, but then it just got strengthened, especially for me and my family. I just got even closer to them. You know.
Yeah, for sure. And I know for myself, I was having a conversation with folks today. We have a repatriation working group that we do once a month with kind of experts who work on repatriation issues. And I was saying, does anyone else feel weird about going and traveling? Like I kind of like not having to do all of those things. And I'm feeling a little bit anxious about having to start that back up. I don't know if you do a lot of traveling, Darrell, in your position as director to various conferences all over the place. But I'm not looking forward to kind of adding those extra hours for traveling and attending conferences on top of the work, because you're right. The pandemic seems to have grown the work that all of us Native nonprofits have been doing in Indian country. So I'm not looking forward to more work. What about you?
Well, you know, actually, when I think we came out of phase 1, I think it was phase 2. I don't know what phase we're in now, as a matter of fact. But we hit the road. You know, I went to Yurok and visited the people. I went to Salalo Falls Longhouse 3 times. I went to Inchalium on the Colville Reservation. I went to Viejas tribe in San Diego. It's the journey. It's like it feels weird. It feels like you got to be cautious and be careful for a number of reasons. COVID's one of them, you know, but just all the racist attitudes in the area, you know, you're always aware of that too, you know. So it's kind of like a double whammy, you know. You're looking around and you're just kind of playing it safe on a lot of different fronts. But when you get to the tribe and you get to the community, you're instantly home. It feels like, it feels so at home, whether I'm in Viejas in San Diego or Inchalium on the Colville Reservation. It just feels right. You know, the elders are in a certain place. Certain people are doing the work. The women are leading. Songs are getting sung, and you feel like you're at home. So,
yeah, I know every time I get the opportunity to travel to Indian country in Washington, it's just, you know, different tribes have different kind of personalities in a way. And, you know, you were sharing about your ancestors and how they wanted to share and make sure they provided useful tools and informations and values about who the tribes were, who Lummi was. And it seems like that's how you, I mean, you all are open and welcome to others. And that's what I always experience when I go up to Washington. And so it always confuses me how colonizers took that as an opportunity to take versus, you know, the opportunity to have a reciprocal kind of mutual relationship. I don't know why they did that. I guess it goes back to your discussion about greed, and that's just what that is.
Yeah, it's not just greedy for money. It's greedy for knowledge, you know, and those things that they can appropriate, you know. So yeah, we still have those sensors that we're much better at, you know, sensing when we're in that kind of situation, you know. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate the work that you all are doing to protect salmon. And, you know, I didn't know that Orca lived off salmon. I had no idea that they were connected in that way until I started researching you and researching salmon to try to understand things better. I had no idea. Do you all have
if you want to read a book, it's just out.
Okay.
It's called Orca. It's written by Linda Mapes from the Seattle Times. And I'd recommend that book to anyone. She's a good friend of mine, and that's not why I'm recommending it. It's a good book because it's a good book, you know. But she traveled and researched salmon up and down the Pacific coast for I don't know how many years, and she came up with this book. But the very foundation of her work came from the chief of Lummi, Chief Salish, Bill James.
Okay.
She credits him extensively in the book for learning about the spirit of the work through him and the Lummi people. So
and what was her name again?
Linda, Lynda, Mapes, Mapes.
Okay, I found her. I'm gonna bring that up on our StreamYard here. Great. I love to share good books with folks. So this is the book
Orca,
that Darrell's talking about, right?
Yeah.
Orca by Linda Mapes. I'll put that in the chat.
It's a good read. It's like a coffee table book, but it's got a great information in it, and you can do it in one sitting, you know.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So what else, Darrell? What else would you like to talk about or share with us today? I feel like I'm missing something.
Well, I think we're missing something, and it really is relational, Shannon.
Yeah.
It really is spending time together and walking the beach and meeting the people and eating my brother's salmon and, you know, doing those things that are just so natural when we're in the presence of tribal people, you know. We have this, I guess we'll call it a phenomena for today's program, but it's been going on for like 30 years. And you probably can go to the YouTube channel and watch it. It's called the Canoe Journey Paddle to Lummi 2019, I think. But, you know, that's been going on for 30 years. And I'm just really encouraged, inspired. I'm wanting to do more storytelling within the actual canoe journey itself. It was at Lummi in 2019. It was to go up to Nanaimo last year in Nanaimo, BC on Vancouver Island. Because of COVID, it got postponed. I don't know if it's going to happen next year, but if it does, I'll be sure to let you know. And what it is it's a week-long potlatch hosted by whatever tribe is been selected for a particular year.
Right.
It's from tribes from as far north as Bella Bella, BC, and Alaska, and as far south as you know, the Columbia River and Grand Ronde and Umatilla, and those tribes. They all get in their canoes and they paddle to the destination tribe. Some of them take weeks to get there, you know. And when they get there, then they're welcomed ashore. They ask for permission to come ashore. They're welcomed ashore, and then they begin the protocols. And the tribe that travels the furthest comes up and sings their songs and tells their stories. And at the end of their time on the floor, then they have a giveaway, a sharing with all the people that are present. And you do that over the course of 5 to 7 days. Then on the last day, it's the host tribe that is the one to share their song and ceremony, and at the end of that, share the gifts that they've accumulated over the past year and give it to the people. So that's what's happening there, though, is hundreds, if not thousands, of children are learning to sing and dance and make their regalia and make their giveaway. And I think most importantly, learn their language. And I hear the language like all the time now. When I was a child, we never heard the language. And it's just a stark difference between my childhood to what's here today, you know, and all of them being so proud of who they are and where they come from. And so I really want to promote Canoe Journey to people that haven't been there to come and see it, come and witness it, and get your own going from wherever you're at, and just creating these reasons to gather in the manner that they're gathering here is, I think, good for everybody, you know, all of Indian country, you know. So if we had time, I'd sure like to share a portion of that video, especially like if you could pull it up, if it's there. It's minute 12:48, and I don't know if that you got the right one there though.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I do. So I'm looking. I found a website. Let me.
It's on our YouTube channel.
It's on Children of the Setting Suns YouTube. Okay.
See if it's there.
All right, give me a minute to pull this up. Let's see. Here we go. Make sure we're subscribed. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
When I'm thinking, long term in terms of Salmon people and the movies that we're doing there, what's next? Well, I think Canoe Journey is probably going to be moving from the back burner to the front burner the next 2 years.
Okay, so I'm going to show you what I've got. I'm going to share it, and you're going to tell me what it is and where to share. Let's see. Share this with folks. Okay, so is it this Canoe Journey?
Yeah.
Okay.
12:40.
12:40. Okay, let's see.
12 minutes and 45 seconds maybe be better.
All right, let me see if I can get it up here. 12 minutes and 45 seconds. Well, there's 39. That's good enough.
Of giving themselves and giving to others those things that come from the heart.
Whoops, it's not sharing, is it? Hold on a minute. Oh, there it goes.
This is our national anthem. And this is Lummi.
Just let me know when to end.
We can end in about a minute. That'd be good.
So what's going on there, Darrell?
Well, you notice the elders came out first, but yeah, that's the opening song of Lummi's protocol at Canoe Journey 2019. So the men and the women that are gathered around there are singing our national anthem, the Lummi flood song. It's our creation story that they're sharing. And so the people come in, they begin with our chief and the elders, and then the dancers follow them, the kind of like the oldest to youngest, you know. Mm-hmm. So it took quite some time to get everybody in there, but the community building was packed. There was no room to sit or stand, and people from all over were there to witness our sharing of who we are and where we come from. So every tribe that attended the canoe journey did that exact same thing. They didn't have as many singers and dancers because they weren't from there, you know. They come from a long ways away, to small tribes to big tribes, you know. But it was, the beauty of it was that it was very intergenerational, and very much in the language and very much in our traditional protocols. And the government that was there was a traditional form of government and how they made decisions amongst themselves. So that was the beauty of that year. But all years when they have canoe journey, they come together in that manner.
That's wonderful. We've got from John out in the Northeast, says, greetings from Eastern Longhouse person to you, a West Coast Longhouse people. So thanks, John, for sharing. So, Darrell, what was I going to ask you? I've completely forgotten.
Well, what I'm saying now is I want to write a script for a canoe journey film, you know.
Okay.
So I'm really excited about that, and we've got a number of ideas that we're going to put you know, it's kind of funny, you know. I'm more of an alchemist, you know. I'm not trained anything, but I do know how to put things together. Mm-hmm. And so, as you know, we're more of our oral, traditional type of people. And so having to deviate from that and get things in writing is something I have to rely on others for me to do that, you know. But I don't mind doing that, just so we don't lose the feeling of the work that we're doing, you know.
Right. And I think you said something that was so valuable, and it kind of made me chuckle a little bit inside, because you said, yeah, because I said something like, I feel like I'm missing something, Darrell. What am I missing? And you said, we're missing relational. We're missing the relational part of this. And I chuckled inside because, you know, here we are on this video podcast talking about how important culture is and staying close to culture, and the work that is so important for our youth and elders and all of us. And not just the health of our communities, but for the two-leggeds and the fish and everyone else around us, and that we have all of these dependent relationships with the world that we live in. And so I'm just kind of laughing that we're communicating this all in this very unrelational kind of way. And I will be glad when we all can come together again. And I can't wait to hopefully one day soon, Darrell, come visit you there and would love to. The association would love to help you all any way that we could. I don't think you need our help, but but support is always, I think, welcome and sharing information. And so y'all are doing really amazing work out there.
Thank you. Hey, one thing I guess I do got to make one plug.
Oh, plug.
Yeah, plug. And you can type this in, and it's on Amazon. It's JESINPEL. And we've been working on this book for like 4 years. And the name of the book is Jacinto. And it's a word that was taught to us by an elder from the Salish Reserve in Vancouver Island at Sarlip. It's going to be coming out soon, maybe September, and being published by UW Press, University of Washington Press.
Yeah.
And it's a compilation, and I was in the car with him. His name's Tom Sampson, his English name, and he had given a speech in Seattle. So I was on this car with a couple of my friends, and he was talking to us about his life's work and as an elder, as a tribal leader. He said, I need to write a book, and it was a strong hint, So we said, well, I guess we better do something. So we got our interview equipment together, and we decided to try out some skills that we don't have and interview an elder to get ready to go talk to Tom. So we went around Lummi and interviewed my aunt Ernestine Jensaw and my good friend Ramona Morris, two respected elders. One has passed on, but we got into it and it got really interesting. And we said, oh my God, this is really neat. And so we went and interviewed a few more before we got to Tom. And then we went from doing a book for Tom and doing a compilation, And so we got all the transcript together, and I don't know a thing about publishing a book. So I went to a friend of mine who owns a bookstore here in Bellingham. The name of it is Village Books, and they've been here forever as an independent bookstore. So he encouraged me. He said, yeah, you should do it. It looks pretty good. And, clean yourself up, and I'll give you a list of publishers, and you go talk to them. And he told me, don't get discouraged because you're going to get turned down quite often, but, somebody will pick it up. So I did, I put on my clean jeans and a clean shirt at the University of Washington Publishing House, and I presented it to them. And then, like after a half hour, they said, we want to do this. And so they took it.
Wow.
So I went back to Chuck. I say, hey, this is a piece of cake, man. But yeah, it's something we've just been working on for a long time because of the interviews themselves were just really myself sitting down and asking these people. They're really good friends, elders and spiritual leaders. And just the basic question, just tell us who you are and where you come from. And they kind of just went on for a long, long time. And there were hardly any other questions after that, maybe clarifying, but and the names of villages and what they did, where their name comes from, and all those things that make us tribal people kind of came out, And so that was really a fun thing to do. But after that was all done, it was like every person we talked to had a variation of the different Coast Salish languages. And so working with these editors who are very, detail oriented, and one every T crossed and I dotted, and little slashes explained. And then the elders over here saying it doesn't matter how you spell it, is how you say it. So that was the conflict, and that was the frustrations. And then COVID came down in the middle of it, and it put us back, a year and a half, but we're getting there, Yeah.
So it's set to release in November.
Well, that's our target. I think we got some details to work out yet. Hopefully we'll make it to the finish line, but it'll be out within the next year at least,
That's great. That's great. Well, we'll look forward to seeing that, and maybe we can have you back then to talk about it some more.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be a lot of fun to do that, or come back with the, the salmon people. We're going to do a video series off of that, So we're going to go to like 6 to 8 tribes and delve deep into their lifeway and what they're willing to share and pass on, So we're working on that, plus the research. So we'll have a lot to chat about the next time we meet up. Yeah.
Oh, it's so important work. Man, Darrell, I wish you the best with all of that work you're doing. This kind of stuff, like, it's hard to value. Like, you cannot put a monetary value on the kind of work that you're doing. You're rebuilding a legacy that got diminished, almost destroyed. It's really incredible stuff, and I really want to thank you and all of the folks there at Children of the Setting Sun Productions for the work you do. I hope more can be done around Indian country that's similar.
Well, thank you, Haishka, for having me, and we'll definitely invite you out, key moments, and if you can make it, that's great. If not, we'll share it with you via these methods, that we want you as part of our family, so we'll keep in touch.
Thank you. And I would love to be a part of your family and the family out there. I'm definitely going to make it to the next canoe journey.
I'll let you know when it's going to happen.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time tonight, Darrell, and I wish you the best for the weekend, and hope we get to see and talk again very soon.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Darrell.
Bye.
All right. Well, we are having a great show. Thank you for Darrell Hillaire from the Lummi Nation for giving us your time and your wisdom. So grateful to you. And I love when you go to Washington and the Northwest Coast, the salmon people, they do this. They pray and they do this. They look up and they put their hands up. And it makes me feel so good. I've never been a person to necessarily bow my head. I love to be in a room full of people from the Northwest, the salmon people. So it was great to share this weird box, 2-dimensional room with Darrell tonight. Let's see, what else have I got for everyone? Thank you for joining us and checking in the chats. It was great to hear from folks and seeing a lot of familiar faces there. Please do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also the Children of the Setting Sun Productions has a YouTube channel. So go over there as well and subscribe to their channel. Next week, we may be taking a week off next week, but the next 2 weeks, the last 2 weeks of July, we're going to have some special guests and some special hosts. It will not be me. So we've got some surprises in store for the rest of the month. May see you next week, may not, but please don't forget about us. We're always here. If you can't catch us live, you can always catch us on demand on our YouTube channel. We are the Association on American Indian Affairs, and we're glad you could join us tonight. As always, we're all related. Everything is connected, and you are sacred. Good night, everyone.